All right, our first guest. There would be no other man that I would want to have on to kick off this podcast. We're calling it the Schrager Hour, but we've got 30 minutes with him, and I think it might just be the Sean Payton half hour because I'm going to let him rip. With no further ado, one of my favorite guys in the league and also one of the best coaches in NFL history, Mr. Sean Payton. Welcome to the
Hey,
Schrager Hour.
is this the inaugural?
Yes,
Is
bro.
this the
First.
first one?
Yes, very first. I would not start this with anyone but you. You know that.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of impressed. You normally we run a first play. There's some errors. There's some assignment issues, technical. And everything's been pretty smooth. I mean, the follow up, the emails. Um, listen. I'm honored to be on, and I consider you a close friend, and obviously an outstanding journalist for the NFL. Congrats on your new position at ESPN.
Thank you.
I'm excited to watch you follow our game.
Thank you. This is an Omaha production. So my big boss, though he hasn't called me today, is Peyton Manning. As a Denver Broncos head coach, have you had any interactions or anything notable with Peyton that we should get on the pod out of the gates?
Yeah, listen, the one thing about Denver, I would say, with its former players, it's a city where a lot of the former players stay. Yeah, in other words, you have a Brian Dawkins who plays here and decides to live here. Peyton Manning, who played a lot of his career in Indianapolis, lives here and is raising his family here. There's, I think, the housing market, the quality of life. There are a ton of former players that are in this area, and so I see Peyton quite a bit. Um, Peyton's a little bit of a prankster. He's pretty quick
Yes.
witted, and a year ago, my wife was planning a 60th birthday surprise party, and so my birthday falls in December, and that's in season. And so it's pretty easy when you get in game planning mode to just be immersed with one thing. And she's trying to figure out on a Friday night, which is kind of the quiet night, how to get me over to Shanahan's restaurant. And she reaches out to Peyton, and Peyton initiates the call and discusses, a dinner that he has yearly with a few other couples. We'd love to have Skylene and you go. And I tell Skylene, like, man, I'm tired. But she goes, look, we haven't had a date night in a while. So I bring the sport coat to the office, all of that, and leave work here, head to Shanahan's, and we're going to be in the back room. And
Just a couple couples. Just what, three
yeah,
couples? Yeah.
six people, seven
Right.
people, eight
Right.
people, and open up the back room door, and there's 50 people. My children, they're telling me they're getting in the next day. Really, 50 liars.
That's it. And Peyton Manning helped make this all happen.
Yeah, and here's the deal: Peyton was in Australia. All right. And so he knew what time this event was going to begin. And about 10 minutes later, he just took a picture with his family and he said, "Hey, happy birthday from Australia." And so I would say this, and I would say the same about John Elway. I get to see John all summer, play a ton of golf with him, see Peyton quite a bit. And um, to have these icons and players that come to practice that our players get to see, uh, I think it's pretty special. The tradition
Of
that
course.
that's here. I said this the other day to the team. There's 32 books in this league.
Okay.
Each team has a book. All right. Now some of these books are a little thicker than others, and then there's some books, quite honestly, that don't have a lot to read. And we're playing for one of these franchises that has a thick book,
Nice.
and we have our chance this season to write our chapter. And I think the players feel that, they see that, certainly with our ownership group. It's a special place.
I I remember when you took the job. I remember when you head over there. And it was like no one was picking the Broncos with Russ. Then no one was picking the Broncos with a rookie quarterback. This is year 3. And whether it's Diana Rossini raving about it when she comes out there or whoever else or Kay Adams, and they're all going, oh my God, Denver, Denver, Denver. The bandwagon's full. How do you handle that? And how do you verbalize that to the expectations to a team? Because we're kicking off in 5 days, and a lot of people are taking the Broncos over the Chiefs, and that was not the case the last 2 years ago.
I think that there are expectations, and we can't be afraid of discussing. For years in our league as a head coach, we always focused on the division first. It was the seeding second. In other words, win the division and then try to get the best seed possible, and then play for a Super Bowl championship. And I don't know that that's changed. But I think last year, when you make it to the playoffs and you exit with a bitter ending, it's tough to swallow. But then you have that opportunity in the offseason to sign some veteran players that have been there, that have experience. You have a real good draft. And then you have a quarterback in year 2. The expectations, those should rise. And
Greenlaw and Hufanga are what pop off the page to me. What do you make of Dre Greenlaw as we're about to kick off this season? This guy, he's a beast, man.
He's physical. Both players love football. And, 2 times as a head coach during my career, I've had a chance to coach the Pro Bowl. And this was when there was a football game. My first year in New Orleans, we went to the NFC Championship game. And back then, the Pro Bowl fell after the Super Bowl. And so what the league did was the championship game losers, all right, those coaches and their staffs coached the Pro Bowl, AFC, and NFC. And so that 06 Pro Bowl team, I was the head coach of the NFC. Belichick, they had lost to the Colts. He had the AFC. And then I would say 7 or 8 years later, when that game was played prior to the Super Bowl, they used the highest seeded, and this is the current format, the highest seeded division winners that lose. So when you coach that game, you realize not only are the players talented, but they have all the other things, all the other intangibles. They're out early to practice. They're taking care of their bodies. They're elite in so many areas, and then you get the best in the world.
Who was that guy in the 06 Pro Bowl that you saw and you're like, oh shit, this guy's the real deal?
It's interesting because there's a little bit of an advantage when you have a chance to coach in that game.
It's like the Senior Bowl in a little bit of a way in the draft.
Yeah, so relative to the Senior Bowl, this would be an advantage to free agency. And you just, man, you come across so many different players, and for a week, you really get an idea of their work ethic. There's been a number of them. It was the Pro Bowl game.
Is that where Sean Taylor laid out the punter Mormon?
The late Sean Taylor. I had a chance to coach him.
That's amazing.
And when he hit the punter, everyone in the stadium gasped. And, at that time, we had the returner from Chicago.
Hester,
and he had to play corner because of an injury, because the rosters are limited. Steve Smith was one of the receivers. The thing I remember also is Breeze was the starting quarterback, and that was coincidence. He had a great year. And in the second series, he dislocated his elbow.
No.
So as the head coach of the Pro Bowl team, like the whole time you're calling a game, but you're kind of looking, hey,
how's he doing?
How's Drew doing? For the next year. But it's an honor to get a chance to coach those type of athletes, though. It really is.
All right. We could talk Broncos all day long. You'll do that on 30 other interviews. I want to give you some names, and we're just going to pepper some things throughout your life. Let's start off with Wayne Gretzky and the Breakfast Club. What does that mean?
Yeah. So there's a place in the summertime up in Idaho, Gaza Ranch. It's, it's I would say a lake resort. There's a golf course there. There's quite a few hockey players there, but also former baseball players, former coaches. Um, a, a really mixed bag of a lot of different people. Los Angeles, Arizona, Dallas, and I would say there's probably 8 to 10 of us that every morning, about 8 o'clock, we're having breakfast and talking about the day's events, whatever that is. And then we know at 10 o'clock, the first tee time is going off, 10:10 and 10:20. So there's 3 tee times. And then each day, you kind of mix up the groups. And so, Gretzky, I would say he's one of the chairmen.
Okay.
He certainly sits at the head of the table. I'd say this about Wayne Gretzky, though, that that's really remarkable for all his successes. And look, whether it was goals, Stanley Cups, I've never been around someone is humble, is polite, and is gracious, and is giving as Wayne. And he also has a really good witty sense of humor. It's unimaginable as you're sitting there talking, and it could be about anything. He's one of the nicest guys that I've ever met. And then when you consider, certainly one of the nicest superstars that I've ever met. I mean, there's not a bit of ego with him. Now there's some humor.
Okay, so who's the crew? Like, it's you, Gretzky. Who else is playing?
You got Morrow, you got Whitney, you got Kelly Chase.
Kelly Chase. I love this.
You got the Massimo designer from LA. You got John on. Yeah, I could go on and on. You've got John Cooper, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. You've got Pat Burrell, the former
baseball player, Phillies
baseball player. A lot of first round draft picks, and so but all of that's out the window.
Everyone's normal. It's great.
Yeah, there's a few of us. A lot of those guys are retired. Maybe they're into their second career. They all have an interest in our team just because of the friendships. This past weekend there was a bunch of PGA Tour players up there, so you get a lot of different people, a lot of friendly people,
a lot of winners,
and I would say a very diverse group too.
I like that.
Yeah.
Jerry was in the news, obviously, for this Parsons trade. I'm not going to ask you to break it down. That's not your job. But you were Jerry's offensive coordinator for several seasons when you were with Parcells down there in Dallas. Jerry's documentary's out also. Give us some Jerry Jones memories and maybe your takeaway, not only from your time with him, but then seeing this trade and why you're not at all surprised because you know who Jerry Jones is.
Well, I think I loved working with him. And I went when Bill went. Bill hired me, Parcells, over the phone in 2003, and his instructions were meet me at the Long Island Republic Airport, pack for 2 months, and then we'll discuss your salary and your title. And I back then, I was all in.
But you were just coming off with Fossil. You were already a hot name, but you still left?
It was an opportunity. It was an opportunity that I felt like to have a chance. No one knows, when a coach is going to finish coaching, but I had 3 years there with Bill, and I don't honestly think, Peter, I'm the same head coach without that advanced education. I think I was going to have a chance to become a head coach, but I don't think I was going to have the success. It was like law school, and it wasn't always easy. He was very confrontational, but he was so good in every element of the game, especially personnel and getting his team ready to win that week. He used to talk about it all the time. There's a way to win each game, and you just have to figure it out. And I would say he and Jerry had a great relationship. And
I
I think
find that's so interesting because everyone always thinks Jerry wants a pushover at head coach, but
there
that
were
was not
so
the case
many.
there.
Listen, and this is a credit to both of them. There was so much attention and focus on that relationship, and the two of them knew it, and yet they embraced it. And so I had a chance to see the documentary. It's funny because when you see something like that, you forget certain games. You forget the significance of the
Oh,
Charles Haley trade,
gosh.
and then the Deion Sanders trade, and then somehow or another you thought maybe Jimmy was involved in drafting Michael Irvin, but Michael was the first.
Predated him. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Jimmy coming in, and then all the small ties. Like I like the history of the game. I've worked with Jimmy at Fox. Both of us have.
Yep.
And so it was. It wasn't like I thought it might be. I found myself like let's stay up another hour and watch another
No
one.
doubt.
You
No
know,
doubt.
and you're on to a good show when you do that. The shows that drive me crazy are the ones that I got to wait for next week.
Oh, well, that's the HBO model. They put
Yeah.
them on once, and then it's all right. You want
I
White
want
Lotus?
the
We'll see you
whole
on Sunday. You're a
library.
binger.
I want every season.
Did you
Um,
watch? Did you watch the Billy Joel documentary this summer?
I have.
Your
Yeah,
thoughts?
amazing.
I loved it. I loved it.
Amazing talent. I think the most favorite thing I saw this summer though was the um, oh um, the Bob Dylan, was it
Oh, Chalamet, the movie
no, yeah, and it was
from nowhere, whatever the movie was called, the one with
yeah,
the kid. Yeah,
it was the line in one of his songs, and
yeah.
it was the story of Bob Dylan, and
You liked it? I thought it was all right. It got nominated for everything, and he won a couple awards. But I watched it on a plane, and I was like, all right, I get it. Electric, acoustic, I get it.
it was just
You loved it?
amazing. Well, the opening part of that where he finds his hero in a
Goes to his
hospital,
hospital. Woody Guthrie, right?
yeah, in North Jersey.
Mm.
He's in New York, can't find him,
Takes a
and then
taxi.
he just plays the song for him. And Guthrie really can't talk, but he just starts pounding the wall.
You love
Like
that.
I like what I'm hearing. And then the next thing you know, you have a superstar. But back to Jerry, and
But back to Jerry.
back to this trade, because look, um, not knowing anything about the inner workings of an organization and a player,
Mhm.
and certainly in this case, Micah, nothing surprises you in this league relative to draft or offseason acquisitions. Like you've seen it all, and so I think it from afar it looks like they hit an impasse and then got compensation and made the decision organizationally, both teams. And the one thing that generally happens 3 years down the road, we're able to measure, how those things worked out. And initially, when the Cowboys traded Herschel Walker, Dallas went crazy.
Mhm.
Now, the unique thing about that trade was it was for 5 players, and I didn't know this.
No, I learned this in the doc also that they
It's-
become draft picks.
If you chose to release the player, they became draft picks. That was brilliant. So I don't know that there's been a trade like that again. But I think when it comes to drafting players and when it comes to off-season free agent acquisitions and when it comes to trades, I always think, it takes 2 to 3 years to kind of, and then a lot of times it's a win-win for both teams. That happens more often than you think. And then sometimes it tilts one way or the other. And I think 3 years from now, we'll have a better feel.
It takes massive balls to make that trade, though. And it can only happen with a guy who doesn't have to answer to anybody. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and look, anytime you trade a player, though, it's going through ownership. You're discussing it as an organization, and some trades are very easy to make. And then some trades are more difficult to make. We just made a trade with Devon Bailey, who was a draft pick we selected a year ago. And I know that was more of an under the radar trade. He was a 7th round selection, but that was one of the more difficult trades that I was involved or a part of making because of all the things he brought to the table. And yet there were two teams that had a strong need for a bigger receiver. We had depth at the position. That was a difficult trade, and emotionally, that was a difficult trade also for the team. And so sometimes, that's not easy.
Jerry, I mean, so you're the hottest offensive coordinator in football, and I know you definitely had head coaching opportunities. Did Jerry ever do anything that was like, no, like, you're my guy? Because I gotta imagine that those first 2 years you were coming out of the gates, you guys were awesome.
I have a good memory, and had the good fortune of working with a lot of good coaches on that Cowboys staff. Mike Zimmer was the defensive coordinator; he was outstanding. Reese Carthon. There were a number of great coaches, the late Tony Sperano, and of course, Bill was the head coach. And right after our first season in 2003, the very first year we finished, we went to the playoffs. We had a, I'd say, a B team, but
Quincy Carter, you guys lose to the Panthers,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we advanced to the playoffs, lost in the first round, and right away, Mike Zimmer was getting recruited pretty heavily by Nebraska. They had a job opening, and Zim had a chance to be the head coach at Nebraska, and he came back, and Jerry spent some time with him, and Zim ended up staying in Dallas as the defensive coordinator. And then the following week, Bill comes to see me, and he says, Al Davis wants to interview you for the head job. And he said, I'm going to be honest with you. I think he's going to want to hire you. And when you're young and hungry, there's only 32 of these jobs.
I get it, man.
You're driving 140 miles an hour. And so I fly out to Oakland, spend 3 days with Mr. Davis, and then have a family vacation in Florida while he interviews other candidates. And so later in the week, he and I would speak nightly now about staff, and it became apparent to me that he was going to offer me this job. And
silver and black. This has got to be tantalizing.
Yeah, and look, I went to Joseph A. Bank and got my black suit with the silver tie. All right, and I would say Thursday at Disney World, I get a call in the morning from Michael Lombardi, and he says, "Look, Al wants to speed this up and fly you in here tonight." And I still, like, there was still 3 days left of this vacation all the way to Sunday. And I said, Mike, he said, well, you're going to have to call Al. And so we were at the Rainforest Cafe, and the family was having lunch. I walked outside under a giant mushroom.
Yep.
And I'll never forget it. I called Al Davis and explained to him, I said, look, I made this commitment. You and I have talked about commitments. And he understood. He said, look, we'll bring you in Sunday then. So flew the family back on Sunday, went out and saw him for another 3 days. Now, at this time, Bill is a little bit Bill's getting impatient because he thinks he's going to lose his coach. He just wants an answer.
Sure. He needs to hire a new OC if you leave.
And I understand it. And I came back to Dallas, and there hadn't been a final decision. And my locker had a box. It was kind of packed, and I'll never forget this. It was Wednesday morning. The phone rang, and it was Bill. He was in Jupiter, Florida, and he said, I'd like to talk to you as a father figure, not as your head coach.
Wow.
And I said, of course. And he said, you've got some other friends that have worked there in Oakland. John Gruden, who was just here, Bill Callahan, of course, John Fox. And he said, I want to know what they've told you about that opportunity. And I said, well, there's certain concerns they would have because of the roster, their salary cap at the time. Al was brilliant. There's never been someone. Think about this for a second.
Tell the listeners his career. I mean, this is a guy who coached, right? Tell everything.
Let's go backwards. He was the commissioner of the AFL. He was a general manager. He was the head coach. Like, he held every position up the totem pole. And I would say was responsible for many of the protocols that are used in scouting today. And so Ron Wolf, Bill Parcells, there was a group that spent a lot of time with Al Davis. And so Bill said to me, he said, and I remember this very well, he said, look, I know it's hard to turn down a job. He said, but you're going to have other opportunities. He said, if you're studying the salary cap and you're studying where they're at as a team right now, this is going to be a tough one.
Huh.
And so I appreciated the conversation, which was much different than maybe our prior conversations. And when we hung up, 2 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was Jerry. And he asked me to come by the house. He sent a driver, and I think it was the same type of trip that Zim took. And so there's a moral to this story. If Jerry's the last guy you see, you're probably staying. And went over and spent time with Jerry. He was fantastic. He made Mike Zimmer and myself both the highest paid coordinators at any given time. But it was more than that. He had a vision for us. There were no promises. It was we were building something. And then then the challenge was backing out of.
How's that conversation with Al Davis?
Well, listen, that we went 8 years, so that was 2003, and the combine. Al was there, and he had an intimidating presence, so you avoided him at all costs. In 2011, we played him in the preseason.
Wait, you'd see him at the combine, you would walk the other hallway?
Like a half a block around him. All right. And so
you're a grown man, Super Bowl title, everything.
No. So we in 2011, it's a preseason game, and Al's sick. And we're in Oakland, and a couple of my assistants, Joe Vitt and then Greg Benzel, they say, let's go up. We should visit Al. And so we went and knocked on the door of his suite and had a chance to just sit, and we chatted for 15 minutes. We were early, the preseason game, hours before it was going to begin. And then I think he passed away like 2 months later.
Wow.
And
so you did have that closure with him.
Yeah. He was
How were those 15 minutes?
They were amazing. He obviously is in the Hall of Fame. And then if you had a Mount Rushmore of just NFL people, all right, to include 7, let's say it's a Mount Rushmore that doesn't include players.
Okay.
Al's in that he's got a place in NFL history.
That's a fun game. I'm thinking Rozelle is on that list, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And don't put them next to each other either.
No, because they were arch enemies, right?
Yeah. You got to put them opposite of each other.
But wait, Sean, I know, don't you, some of the stuff that you carried yourself as kind of this iconoclast and maverick, there was a little Al Davis in you for many years. And I still feel like you've got some Al Davis to you.
I think we're all products of our bloodlines, and sometimes we get to select those, and sometimes we don't, and we're lucky, or we're maybe not as lucky. And for me, early on, I wanted to be a college coach in the Big Ten. I'm from Illinois. And then I end up getting hired by the Eagles and having a chance to work with John Gruden, who was phenomenal with football.
What were your roles at that time? So you were like a quarterback,
quarterback coach, but that was a fancy title for quality control, run and do, cut ups. Then 4 years with the Giants. And then 3 years with Parcells. And so as I look back on all the trips, and you don't realize the moves. You know, it's San Diego State, it's Indiana State, it's Miami of Ohio, it's University of Illinois, it's Eagles, Giants, Cowboys, Saints. There's a journey, and I do think you learn a little bit from each, and I think you learn a little bit of maybe what I don't want to do. And I think that I've been very fortunate when we talk about this. You know, 7 days interviewing with Al Davis is an eternity. All right, and then working with Bill and working with John, and then having a chance to really have a great college head coach and role model in high school. So all of those things contribute to the who you become. And I think I've been fortunate with those people that I've had a chance to build relationships with.
You said you turned 60 last year. Are you as energized and as invigorated going? I mean, tell us where you're at, because I feel like I have a new opportunity now, and I am like through the roof, ready to tackle the world. And it's like, I didn't know if I still had this.
No, I feel the energy. Yeah, no, I feel it from you, and I certainly do. And the players that Bill used to say this all the time. The greatest thing about our game is we're around young people all the time.
What a point! What a great point.
And you get to stay young that way. And now there are moments like the other day we play music kind of indigenous to the city we're going to play, and we were playing the Saints in a preseason game last week. We had Lil Wayne going, and Fats Domino came on, and no one heard of Fats Domino.
None of the 20-year-olds, yeah.
And so after the game, we took 6 buses, 180 people over to where he was buried, and we just discussed his role, not only in music, but we discussed his role.
You took a bunch of players to just Fats Domino's gravesite unannounced.
Yeah, on the way to the airport, we stopped there for half an hour, and he was one of the first artists to play in front of Black and White America.
And you thought that was important, obviously, for these guys to learn.
It was fantastic. Fantastic.
I know you've got a lot of obligations, so I'm going to let you go. In closing, one line: what can Broncos fans and the NFL expect from this team this year?
Yeah, listen, I think look, we're all at the start of the season, and every team in our league right now has a lot of dreams, and we're going to have to earn ours. But you're going to see experience. You're going to see some new players in roles that you didn't see a year ago.
Okay.
Whether they're rookies or veterans, and you're going to see a team, competing to win this division.
I love this. I love you. I appreciate you coming on. You had me ready to run through a wall. I know you've got a million obligations. Sean, good luck this season, and thanks for being the first ever guest of the Schrager Hour, the new ESPN podcast that's about to take over the damn world.
I love it. Thank you.